Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hello Doctor YouTube channel. First of all, I would like to apologize for the long hiatus. I am just one person, and with so much studies and job, along with writing and editing and voice recording, it just becomes too much for one person like me to do. But now I am back full time, and you can expect a more or less consistent upload schedule from me. Okay? Also, in order for me to do this thing consistently, I'm starting a Patreon page, the link to which will be provided in the description box down below. A lot of people keep asking me and requesting me for the notes to my videos. So, this Patreon is for people who want to access my notes and also support me in the process. All of the notes of the videos that I'll upload from now on will be available to my Patreon supporters. I thought it would be nice to start with something completely new rather than continuing with an old series. So today's topic is back to basics, cranial nerve edition. Beginning with our first cranial nerve, the olfactory nerve. So, let's start with our presentation, the olfactory nerve presented by Dr. Joeta Pal. Part 1, the basics. Introduction. The olfactory nerve is the first and the shortest cranial nerve in our body. It is a special visceral efferent nerve, meaning that it carries non somatic information from the periphery to the central nervous system, which is information leading to smell. The olfactory nerve contains only afferent sensory nerve fibers. It does not contain efferent sensory nerve fibers. Afferent means going towards the central nervous system. Okay, it is a paired nerve, and the olfactory nerve, along with the optic nerve, is one of the only two cranial nerves that do not converge with the brainstem. Now, on to the next topic, origin, the olfactory epithelium, and the olfactory neurons. Just the basic anatomy, okay? So, origin. The nerve originates from the cell bodies of the olfactory neuron in the olfactory epithelium. Olfactory epithelium. What is the olfactory epithelium? It's a specialized epithelial tissue found in the posterior superior portion of each nasal cavity containing the olfactory neurons. And what are olfactory neurons? They are bipolar neurons. This is a picture of a bipolar olfactory neuron. Bipolar means having two poles. That is, the nerve projects in two directions. Apically, that is towards the outside world, and basally, that is towards the central nervous system. That is the olfactory bulb. What is the olfactory bulb? It is a central hub and coordinator of the olfactory transmission. From here, the information reaches the primary olfactory cortex via the olfactory tract. Okay, so a lot of information in one go, right? Nothing to worry about. Just think the olfactory nerve starts from the olfactory epithelium. The olfactory epithelium contains olfactory neurons, which are bipolar neurons, and these bipolar neurons then go to the olfactory bulb, and from the olfactory bulb starts the olfactory tract. Okay? Note. The primary olfactory cortex interacts with a variety of cortical and limbic structures via a sophisticated pathway that allows the smell to become integrated with memory, emotion, and taste. Okay, but this is a topic that we'll deal with a little bit later. So far, so on. Olfactory epithelium, olfactory neurons, olfactory bulb, and then olfactory tract, which leads to the olfactory cortex. Okay, so let's start with the basic, that is nose and olfaction. How does our nose play a part in the olfaction overall? Okay, so the first topic is design of the nose. How does the design of the nose help with the olfaction? That is with the sense smell or smell. Okay. So inspiration. During inspiration, the air follows a parabolic pathway. You can see this is a parabolic pathway. Okay, and look at the picture towards the right. This is a parabolic pathway. That is, the air flows up the nasal cavity and then goes into the nasopharynx. What is the purpose of this parabolic pathway? Number one is humidification of air. Because say you're in a wintry area and the air there is very dry, so the air when it goes up the nose becomes humidified such that the cold air does not reach your lungs. That is point number one. And point number two is maximum amount of air flows through the roof of the nose, thus helping in easy identification of smell. This is the first point. The second point, what happens during forceful respiration? During forceful respiration, the nasal airflows becomes turbulent, like as shown in the picture towards the right. This allows for maximum flow of air to the roof of the nose. It is the roof of the nose that contains the nasal epithelium, that is the olfactory epithelium. So, the design of the nose is such that it helps for the maximum flow of air to the roof of the nose containing the olfactory epithelium such that the smell can reach maximally towards the olfactory epithelium and we can detect the smell from our surrounding. This is how nose helps with the identification of smell. Now let's come to the next topic, that is flow of air. First we have discussed with the flow of air. Now let's come to the next topic, that is a nasal epithelium. That is the function of nasal epithelium in olfaction. First, let's come to the anatomy of the nasal epithelium. Okay, the olfactory epithelium is a specialized epithelial tissue covering the septum of the nose, the upper portion of the superior turbinate, and the lateral surfaces of the posterior superior portion of both nasal cavities. It contains olfactory neuron and the basal cells. So, what is the exact location of olfactory epithelium? It covers the superior portion, that is the nasal septum. It covers the lateral aspect, that is the posterior lateral aspect of the posterior superior portion of the nasal cavity, and the medial aspect, like a hood. It is covering the entire upper surface of the nose. Okay. Next, the basal cells. What are the basal cells? So we discussed that it contains two kinds of cells, the basal cells and the olfactory neurons. So the basal cells are stem cells within the basal portion of the nasal epithelium. They give rise to the olfactory neurons, and the olfactory neuron have a half-life of 30 to 40 days. So the basal cells are in fact the stem cells which stays in the olfactory neuron, and they give rise to the bipolar neurons, which are actually the smell detectors of the nose. Okay, so what are bipolar neurons? Olfactory neurons, these are bipolar neurons having a basal side and an apical side. The basal side reacts to the olfactory receptors, and the apical side forms phyla olfactoria and reaches the olfactory bulb. Okay, so this thing is very simple. You have nasal epithelium, you have two kinds of cells in the nasal epithelium, olfactory neurons and the basal cells. Basal cells will give rise to the olfactory neurons, and the olfactory neurons in turn reacts to the chemoreceptors of the surrounding of present in the nose and with the olfactory receptors, and they respond to the sense of smell. They convert chemical sensation into electrical sensations. Okay, now then, all of the olfactory neurons converge into one structure, which is known as phyla olfactoria. There are 15 to 20 phyla olfactorias arising from each of the nose, and they converge to one structure, which is known as the olfactory bulb. Okay. So, first, before studying the entire anatomy and location of the olfactory bulb, we need to understand one topic in particular, that is the cribriform plate. So, what is the cribriform plate? It is the structure that lies between the olfactory epithelium and the olfactory bulb. Okay, the cribriform plate. The olfactory nerve perforates the ethmoid bone in an attempt to reach the olfactory bulb. This perforated bone is known as the cribriform plate or the lamina cribrosa because it looks like a net, a mesh. Hence, it is known as a cribriform plate. The site at which the olfactory nerve traverses the cribriform plate is a danger zone for the nose. Okay, remember what is the danger zone for the nose? It is a site where the olfactory nerves, that is all of the basal ends of the olfactory neurons, that is all of the basal ends of these neurons all of the basal ends, they converge to form the fila olfactoria. Like you can see over here, they form converge to form the fila olfactoria, 15 to 20 on each side. 15 to 20 from 6.5 to 7 million bipolar neurons, 15 to 20 fila olfactoria on each side, and they converge to form, then they traverse through the cribriform plate and they reach the olfactory bulb. So what is cribriform plate? They're small tiny perforations in the ethmoid bone through which the olfactory nerve traverses and reaches the olfactory bulb. It is a danger zone for the nose. Okay, now let's come to the olfactory bulb. Location of the olfactory bulb, it the anterior part lies on top of the cribriform plate and the posterior part lies underneath the frontal lobe beneath the orbital and the rectus gyri. It is a very fancy way of saying that it lies beneath the frontal lobe on top of the cribriform plate. So what is orbital and rectus gyri? Nothing to be too confused about. It is a midline. These are midline structures. You can see this is the gyrus rectus and this is the olfactory sulcus here, and this is the olfactory gyri. It is this actually it is this is the location of the olfactory bulb. It is a very fancy way of saying that bulb lies beneath the frontal lobe on top of the lamina cribrosa. Okay, nothing like that. Nothing to be too confused. If someone says you, tell me the exact position, then you can say the anterior part, that is the part over here. Anterior part lies on top of the cribriform plate and the posterior part lies underneath the frontal lobe beneath the orbital gyri and the rectus gyri. Nothing. These are just gyri and underneath the frontal lobe. Okay, the exact location of the olfactory bulb. Next, let's come to the connections within the olfactory bulb known as the glomeruli. Okay, so we have so far learned about the basal end of the olfactory neurons and the fila olfactoria. We have learned about those things. So let's now come to how they form connections within the olfactory bulb. Okay, so before starting into the entire glomeruli thing, you need to know some information about the olfactory bulb. The thing is that the olfactory bulb basically contains four types of cells: mitral cells and tuft cells, mitral and tuft, okay, which forms connection with the axons of the bipolar olfactory neurons. The basal end, remember the bipolar olfactory neurons having an apical end and a basal end. The basal end projects upward into the olfactory bulb. These mitral cells and tuft cells form connection with these basal ends of the olfactory neurons. Like, see here, the olfactory receptors, olfactory neurons are coming up, and the mitral and the tuft cells forms connection with these olfactory neurons. This connection between the mitral cells and the tuft cells and the olfactory neurons are known as the glomeruli. And I said there are four types of cells in the olfactory bulb. So two types are mitral cells and tuft cells that helps in forming connections with the olfactory neurons. And then there are two other kinds of cells known as the periglomerular cells and the granule cells, which helps in forming connection between adjacent glomeruli. So one glomeruli and the next glomeruli, they help in forming connections with the adjacent glomeruli. How does this help? This helps in fine tuning of the information that is received by the glomeruli. So let's see the notes that I've written on the side here. Axons of the olfactory nerves originating from cell bodies in the olfactory epithelium terminate at the olfactory bulb. Here, they converge with the dendrites of mitral and tuft cells in small clusters called synaptic glomeruli. Periglomerular cells surround the entire glomeruli and maintain dendrodendritic synapses with the surrounding glomeruli. Along with granule cells, periglomerular cells serve to modulate and fine tune the processing of the olfactory information. Both granule cells and periglomerular cells are interneurons. Okay, just like I said. Okay, we will just revise all these things at the end. We'll just cover all these things one after. Like we'll just join all of these things together in a one cohesive information at the end. Just know now glomeruli containing four types of cells: mitral cells and tuft cells, and periglomerular cells and granule cells. Mitral cells and tuft cells helps in forming connection with the olfactory neuron together that they form the glomeruli, and the remaining two are periglomerular interneuron cells that helps in fine tuning the information received by the glomeruli. Okay. Then comes the olfactory tract. So, what is the olfactory tract? The olfactory information transmitted from the axonal projections of mitral and tuft cells form the olfactory tract. So, olfactory neurons coming, forming glomeruli inside the olfactory bulb with the mitral and the tuft cells. The axons of these cells then they pass through the olfactory bulb and merge together to form the olfactory tract. Then it goes into the olfactory cortex. So olfactory neurons goes into mitral and tuft cells, together forms the glomeruli. Then the axons of the mitral and tuft cells collectively forms the olfactory tract, which goes into the olfactory cortex. Okay, let's come to the third part, that is the anatomical course of the nerve. So, nasal epithelium, just like we have discussed before, olfactory epithelium detected by olfactory receptors located within the nasal epithelium. Olfactory receptor sends the information via the bipolar neurons. The axons of the bipolar neurons, that is the phyla olfactoria, assemble into small bundles of true olfactory nerve, which penetrate the small foramina in the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone and enter the cranial cavity. So, the olfactory neurons, basal cells, they perforate together, form the phyla olfactoria, and perforate the cribriform plate and the lamina cribrosa to enter into the olfactory bulb. Then the olfactory bulb. The olfact, once in the cranial cavity, the fibers enter the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is an ovoid structure which contains specialized neurons called mitral cells. They together forms the glomeruli, which receives the information. We know about these things. Okay. Then comes the olfactory tract. The olfactory tract travels posteriorly on the inferior surface of the frontal lobe. So, what is the olfactory tract? The axons of the mitral and tuft cells together forms the olfactory tract. The olfactory tract now travels posteriorly. See, this is the base of the skull, and the olfactory tract will now travel posteriorly beneath the over which over this will lie the frontal lobe. Over this will lie the frontal lobe, and the olfactory tract will travel posteriorly on the inferior surface of the frontal lobe. Okay. As the tract reaches the anterior perforated substance at the level of the optic chiasma, so this is the anterior perforated substance. You can see tiny, 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 tiny perforations over here at the level of the optic chiasma. Okay, anterior, actually, the name anterior perforated substance is because this area of the brain is perforated by many small arteries. Okay, we'll study about this later. But at the level of this anterior perforated substance, the olfactory tract divides into two parts, which is known as the medial stria and the lateral stria. Okay, so olfactory tract, it is formed by the axons of the mitral and the tuft cells. They travel posteriorly beneath the frontal lobe at the level of the optic chiasma, that is at the level of the anterior perforated substance. It divides into two parts, that is the medial stria and the lateral stria. Okay, so next topic, the medial stria. So you can see this is the olfactory tract, this is the lateral stria, and this is the medial stria, and this is the medial stria of the opposite side. The red color is the medial stria of the opposite side. The medial stria, what it does is that it carries the axons across the medial plane of the anterior commissure where they meet the olfactory bulb of the opposite side. So, what the medial stria does is that it helps in maintaining communication between the two olfactory bulbs. It will travel to the opposite side of the brain via the anterior commissure, and it will end up with the olfactory bulb with the opposite side. That is the function of the medial stria. It helps in maintaining connections between the two olfactory bulbs. And the lateral stria, it carries the axons to the primary olfactory cortex, which is located in the uncus of the temporal lobe. So, olfactory tract divides into medial stria and lateral stria. Medial stria communicates with the olfactory bulb of the opposite side and helps in maintaining connections between the two olfactory bulbs and the two sides of the nose. And the lateral stria will carry the information to the primary olfactory cortex of which is located in the uncus of the temporal lobe. So this is a flow chart which will show you the entire thing that I talked about. So medial olfactory stria, it goes to the opposite side. Lateral olfactory stria goes to the primary olfactory cortex, that is in the uncus, that is the medial side of the temporal lobe. And the primary olfactory cortex then sends the information to the secondary olfactory area. So what are the olfactory cortexes exactly? Let's study the olfactory cortexes. Okay, so the primary olfactory cortex, the primary olfactory area is a collection of area. It is not a single area, okay? It's a collection of area in the medial side of the temporal lobe, namely the periamyloid area, the piriform area, which is the largest of all of these areas, okay? So the periamyloid area around the amyloid region, the piriform area, the uncus, and the anterior hippocampal area. It also includes the olfactory tubercle. You needn't know about the olfactory tubercle, it is a little advanced. So, it is a collection of four areas, namely the periamyloid area, the piriform area, which is the largest of all of these four areas, the uncus of the temporal lobe, and the anterior hippocampal area. What is the function of the primary olfactory area? It sends information to a number of other areas which helps in processing of in smell in relation to behavior and emotion. It also helps in learning of new smell and odor. So what is this primary olfactory area is mainly a relay area. Okay, it helps in sending information to a number of other areas and helps in processing our behavior and emotion in response to that smell. So you smell something, it goes to the primary olfactory area, then the primary olfactory area will send the information to some other area, and that other area will detect, oh, this information, say you smell something poo. Okay, you smell poo. So the that area of the brain will recognize, oh, this is the smell of poo. So that area will then tell your motor and the sensory system that, listen, dude, you are smelling poo right now, so you should move away from that poo. Okay, so that is the basically the function of the primary olfactory area, that it helps in relating our behavior and emotion in response to smell. Okay, and it also helps in learning of new smell and odor. That is primary olfactory area. And like I said in the flowchart above, that the primary olfactory area sends information to the secondary olfactory area. Okay, so we'll learn about that in a little bit of details. Let's just see the picture of the primary olfactory cortex over here. All this in blue color, everything is primary olfactory cortex. See, it is not a singular area, it is not a singular structure, it is a collection of structures. So the, like I said, the periamyloid area, the piriform area, the uncus, and the perihippocampal area, they are all primary myeloid area. Everything in blue is primary myeloid area. Okay, and primary olfactory area, I'm so sorry, primary olfactory area. And the secondary olfactory cortex is enterodinal area of the parahippocampal area, that is area 28. Just remember, it is a little debatable what the secondary olfactory cortex is, but the secondary olfactory cortex, I've read many books and I've read many articles, and most of them agree on the fact that the enterodinal area is, that is area 28, which is around the parahippocampal region, that is actually the secondary olfactory cortex. A few of the data, they do not support this evidence. They say that the entorhinal area is actually a part of the primary olfactory cortex, but most of the books that I've studied, they said that the entorhinal area is actually the secondary olfactory cortex. And what is the function of the secondary olfactory cortex? It receives information from the primary olfactory area and is associated with storing and indexing of smell information, smell sensations. So, what does the secondary olfactory cortex do? Like you smell something new. Say you have cooked a new dish, okay, and it has a unique smell. So, your primary olfactory cortex, what it does is that the first time, the primary olfactory cortex is responsible for behavior and emotion related to smell. So for first time you smell something new, you won't have any behavior or emotion in response to that smell because it is something completely new. So what the primary olfactory cortex does is that it sends that information to the secondary olfactory cortex, and then the secondary olfactory cortex will coordinate with the other sensations like the eyes and then the tongue and all the taste sensations and the sight sensation of sight, and it will register along with that sensation, okay, so this is a new food that you are going to eat right now. And it will, the secondary, what the secondary olfactory cortex will do, that it will register that smell as a new smell in your brain. Suppose you're eating quesadillas for the first time, okay, you have never eaten quesadillas before, and you smell the quesadilla, Your nose doesn't know, your brain doesn't know what the quesadilla is. And then along with your sight and along with your taste sensation, your secondary olfactory cortex, after you have eaten that and you have felt everything, all the emotions and everything, how spicy it is and how rich it is in taste, and along with the smell, your secondary olfactory cortex will be responsible for storing that new smell in your brain as the smell of quesadillas. Okay, so the next time when you do smell quesadillas, it will not be a new sensation, it will be an old sensation. Like, okay, so that is quesadilla that I'm smelling. Then the primary olfactory cortex will behave according to the information that has been stored in the secondary olfactory cortex. You understand me, right? The secondary olfactory cortex is like the hard disk of the brain. Okay, it will store all the information inside the brain. All the new information inside the brain will be stored by it. New sensations, it will be responsible for indexing and storing them under different headings. And then the primary olfactory cortex is really responsible for behaving in response to that smell. Okay, so let us look at this picture again. This color that you see in green, the entorhinal area, is actually the secondary olfactory cortex. They're all related. See, they're all connected together. And the most important thing is that you need to remember that they are not single areas, they are connection of areas in the brain. Primary olfactory cortex is responsible for our behavior and our emotion in response to smell, and the secondary olfactory cortex is responsible for indexing the information, new sensory information, that is smell information in our brain. Okay, so let us look at this structure here. Just a summary of the entire thing that we have learned so far. So before here you have the olfactory epithelium, which is not visible in this picture. So from the olfactory epithelium you have the olfactory nerves, which come to the mitral and the tuft cells. From that you have the olfactory tract, which divides into two parts: the medial stria and the lateral stria. The medial stria goes to the olfactory bulb of the opposite side, that is the granule cells, that is the interneurons, and helps in correlating the smell sensations from both the sides. The lateral olfactory stria will go to the primary olfactory cortex, and from that will go to the secondary olfactory cortex. So this is the basic thing that you need to know about the olfactory nerve. And then the next thing that you need to know, that what is the function of the olfactory nerve. I've written it here. Function of the olfactory nerve. The olfactory nerve has one function only: sense of smell. Now, the sense of smell can be broadly categorized into many different parts, that is, behavior in response to smell, emotions in response to smell, salivating in response to smell, storing and indexing of new smells. But the most important function of the olfactory nerve is everything to do with smell. It does not have any other function, and it is an afferent nerve. It does not have any efferents, that is, nothing is going out from the central nervous system out to the peripheral nervous system. It is a purely afferent nerve that travels from the olfactory epithelium of the nose up to the olfactory cortex, that is primary and the secondary olfactory cortex. So with that we end the olfactory nerve, the first in the series we are going to do. And I'm going to do actually the first in the series that I'm going to do. This is a cranial nerve series. This is a phase, actually. This is back to basics phase, and this is the first in that back to basic phase. Like, I have divided into many parts. Okay, so phase, then chapters, and then a series. Okay, so I have the phase back to basics, and in that I have the series cranial nerve series, and this is the first video in the cranial nerve series. Next week I'll come up with the olfactory. So I've finished the olfactory nerve. Next week I'll come up with the optic nerve. That is the second nerve. I'm already working on that. And thank you guys so much for watching this video, and thank you for such good response on the kidney video that I did, congenital anomaly of the kidney, a few weeks back. And many of you have asked that where is the second part, like the remaining parts of the video, and I will be coming up with the remaining parts of those videos as well. So for the time being, this is my first video in a long time. I'm coming back, and the next thing is that anyone who wants to get the notes of this video, you can go to my Patreon link down below. It will also help me support my own studies, because this is very hectic. All of these research and studying and making these slides and doing these drawings, they are very hectic. So it will also support me. If you guys do go and subscribe to my Patreon, it will also support me. So my Patreon link is provided in the description box down below. If you want to subscribe, go and subscribe to my Patreon for the notes of this video and the future videos that I'm going to make. And that's it for today. I'll see you guys in the next week. Have a nice week. Bye.